Welcome to Greywood Gardening. It is almost the middle of August now, and we are having a particularly good year for the veggie garden here at Greywood. We are just reaching the point of peak abundance where we're beginning to harvest more than what we need for dinner for the week. We're harvesting a lot of the excess to be stored for the winter to come. But no matter how good everything is going in the gardens, there are always those things that don't work out. So I thought today it might be fun to take a look around Greywood and take a look at all of the things that are actually not working out or that have gone wrong, even in the midst of all of this abundance. Let's take a look. Take a look here at my poor onions. So one thing that I did is half of the onions on this half of the bed, I cut the tops about halfway off in hopes of helping to grow larger bulbs, and the other half I let them continue to grow as high as they wanted. Well, shortly after I did that, we had a really windy day, and I started to see some of the onions on this side falling over, getting knocked over in the wind, but this side were all nice and strong. So I was patting myself on the back until that night we had a much bigger windstorm. All of this side fell over onto the onions on this side and knocked them over. So now all of the onions are basically done growing now that these necks are crimped. They're not going to get any bigger. I have a bunch of onions that are really small, but I have at least a handful of decent sized onions, so I can at least deliver the onions for making Mrs. Greywood's salsa entirely out of stuff in the garden. But definitely not the result I wanted to have this year. My poor cantaloupe here has not fared well. So I was tying the cantaloupe up the fence here, trying to get it up in the air, get a lot of good airflow, prevent powdery mildew. Unfortunately, the deer managed to come on the other side of the fence and just ate every single vine that was coming up here. Only this tiny little bit right here remains. Fortunately, I did let one vine trail along the ground, so we are growing a single cantaloupe right now. And unfortunately, the same thing happened to the butternut squash that I was tying up on the fence right next to it. Everything up against the fence got eaten. Fortunately, there was a bunch on the ground, so we still have at least 4 butternut squash that we're going to get this year. But super good lesson to me that I really can't put anything in these beds along the fence, which I was planning on using this as, you know, bonus trellises. And now I think unless it's onions, nothing can go here. So the potato in pot experiment hopefully is going to be okay, but I have to admit I neglected these guys on more than one occasion. One of the problems I have is as we get into the heat of summer, particularly like late July and August, most of the plants in the garden are really well established, and despite the super hot sunny days, they don't need to be watered that often. But of course that is not the case with these potatoes that are in pots. After 3 days, these have to be watered now that they're mature. So on 2 different occasions now, I came out to check on the garden. Everything was looking beautiful, and the potato plants were completely laying flat on the ground. They had wilted all the way down. I emergency watered them back up. They grew back by the next day, perked back up by the next day, but whoo, they did not look happy, and they still look pretty rough. So I'm pretty confident we're still going to get potatoes out of these, but it is possible that I neglected them and almost killing them twice now. Could be the cause of much smaller potatoes than I'd otherwise get, which frustrates me because now if I'm not happy with the size of the potatoes, I don't know if it's a problem with the size of my pots, with the potato variety, or with the fact that I didn't take good care of them. So if the potatoes are too small, still going to have to try the experiment again next year. So this is the annual herb bed, and it's been pretty much a disappointment this year. So on this side, I direct seeded dill, chamomile, and cumin. The dill has finally, there was 2 rows of dill, 1 row didn't really germinate much, the other row finally came in. It's pretty lean and short, it's not great looking dill, but it's usable. I'm using this to make pickles out of the cucumbers. The chamomile is also like just a fraction of what these plants should be. These should be like 3 foot high. These should be big, big bushy plants taking up a ton of space. And then the cumin that I direct seeded never germinated at all. Didn't come up at all. In the middle here is basil. What's interesting is on the other side of this bed I have the parsley and tarragon, and they're doing great. Big, full, lush plants. So the difference with those is I started them inside and transplanted them out, which really makes me think that it's the direct seeding that was the problem here, and not any fertility in the bed. And that means probably, I'm guessing, I just didn't do a good enough job of keeping the surface of the soil constantly wet so everything could germinate. But it does make me tempted to try starting these guys inside next year, even though the seed packs recommend direct seeding. So the saddest part here is the loss of the cumin, because the cumin is one of the components of chili powder, and one of my goals for the veggie garden this year was to grow everything that I needed to make my own chili powder. And now I'm going to be missing one of those ingredients. So this is probably the strangest gardening fail I've had, which this is my spearmint plant, and it looks like it's dying. I've grown spearmint before, and I wasn't aware it was possible to kill mint, and I have no idea what's going on with it. We're getting like the yellowing and dropping off of the leaves inside. I mean, the plants normally get a little shaggy when they start blooming, but nothing like this. And what's stranger is in this exact same bed on the other side is the peppermint, which is doing great. It's going gangbusters. In fact, we've harvested a ton of this already to dry the leaves, to make peppermint tea, and to use the leaves to make peppermint extract. So again, not something wrong with like the bed, or like I have no idea what it is, and I don't understand what, if it's a disease, why would it be affecting the spearmint and not its super closely related neighbor, the peppermint, which is right next to it. But who can say? I have a hunch, because it's a mint plant, it's not gonna die. I have a hunch this guy is gonna be coming back next year, but we will see. And something I do want to stress again is we're having a fantastic year in the veggie garden this year. We are getting just an abundance of food out of it, and we've even been harvesting sweet corn this year. 3rd year growing sweet corn, 1st year harvesting it, and it tastes amazing. Sweet corn, in fact, I think we have decided tastes the most better than grocery store produce of all the different kinds of produce that we grow. So again, we're having a great year, but even in a great year, there's always a bunch of stuff that's going wrong. Nothing is ever perfect. All right, that is all that I have for you this time. I'm not sure how long it'll be before the next one, because we are actually expecting a new member of the Greywood household any day now, and that is probably going to occupy me for a little while to come. In fact, we'll see how much the garden gets neglected when that happens. All right, until next time, whenever that may be, happy gardening.